Rules Committee will come to order, and thank you very much for joining us today. The Rules Committee will consider H.R. 3823, the Disaster Tax Relief Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2017. This legislation includes tax changes to provide immediate relief to those devastated in Florida, Texas, Georgia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. The devastating floods and the disaster we responded to with a package 2 weeks ago. This is a follow-up as a tax package. There are people in the U.S. and its territories who are still suffering from losses and devastation as we speak, and they want and need Congress to act. I had a meeting this afternoon with the Ways and Means crack staff, who advised me that, in fact, what we're doing here is rather slim compared to previous action that has been taken, including in 2005 and 2008. But it's immediate relief that we believe that will help to devastated areas that continue to still suffer because of existing water and structures that are in need. And in the case of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, 2 floods, 2 storms, 2 problems. This legislation takes an important step to provide relief to those individuals and to the governments, including important flood insurance reforms that are pro-consumer and passed out of the committee, 58-0, and on the House floor, 419-0. That's common sense. The rule also makes clarifications to ensure Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands are treated equitably in all tax sections of this bill. And I want to thank Congresswoman Gonzalez and Congresswoman Plaskett, who I have spoken to both of them over the last 24 hours several times. We're sorry that they're unable to be with us. Stacy was calling to me on the landline. Said, Pete, it's dark.
The picture of...
She has to be remembered. She has to be remembered. And I told her we would be here today. And Louise, I told her we would do the right thing. They represent the people of the islands and of Puerto Rico, and they're our colleagues. This bill also reauthorizes the FAA for 6 months, which has overwhelming bipartisan support and is critical to ensure that radar systems in Puerto Rico, among others, continue to function on the island while planes are bringing emergency supplies. I've been advised that if we do not pass this, those emergency and critical programs would be in trouble on the islands. Finally, this legislation extends several expiring health programs to the end of the year, including teaching health centers, or GME, for graduate medical programs, and the special diabetes program for Indians. I think this is an important bill. I want to thank my colleagues for coming together today. I also want to thank the gentleman, Kevin Brady, Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and his crack staff for taking our feedback, for working the package. And I want to personally thank Kevin Brady for his devotion to this effort. It ensures the FAA will continue to function. And I will tell you that the FAA has done a great job 24 hours a day with the continued traffic and problems that they have encountered. Before we go too far, I want to yield to the gentlewoman, Mrs. Slaughter, for any opening statements you may choose to make. The gentlewoman's recognized.
I don't have a formal statement, Mr. Chairman, but I do believe that it is incumbent on our side to say that we do want to do the right thing, but we're also very much concerned that at the end of this week, Medicare extenders, community health centers fund, Perkins Loan, CHIP, the children's health programs will all expire.
Yes.
And I need to know if you plan to have another Rules Committee before Friday to deal with those, or what do we say to our constituents about letting those expire?
We, thank you.
Yeah. These well, I think of critical importance, frankly, and I don't know why
We don't tend to let them expire.
what are you going to do?
Well, we're going to have to do something.
Okay, I will,
And we're doing part of it right now. We had to do with what we're doing right now.
Uh-huh.
And we're hoping, I called my senior senator from Texas, Senator Cornyn, and I spoke with him. I'm trying to speak with him now about what we're trying to do. I hope that we recognize we need the Senate to do things. We're trying to pass them things to get done, and we intend, I think today is the 26th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's getting to the end.
right. We are getting to the end, so I can assume then we'll have another Rules Committee.
You may
before
assume that we're
Friday.
not going to let these
Well,
programs
actually, we're
expire.
leaving Thursday, I believe.
There are some provisions that could be made and are being made to where there is money in the system to continue their operation. So at no point do I think that we are doing anything that would necessarily cut a program or would not have money there. We've focused our activities off really, and you know this because you've been in these circumstances and you see them. We're trying to aim our effort at making sure we get right to help the islands.
Absolutely. No,
Make sure
we
we
agree absolutely
understand
with
their
that.
tax code
Right.
and the ramifications on them. And Jennifer Gonzalez has done a great job of effectively communicating that. And it's just then getting everybody in the same line. So
We
that's what
made
we're
a
trying to
good statement, I think, last night on it, so
Yes, ma'am.
certainly, we absolutely agree with that.
Yes, ma'am. So, but I want to answer
Yeah.
your question, and that is that I do not believe that these programs have funding problems,
Okay,
and they would continue.
all right.
And we believe, well,
Just December?
up until we would not allow them.
Till we can deal with it.
We're not going to allow that to be a problem. Now, somebody wants to tell me something.
All right.
Okay. See, my adult supervision said good through December, but I don't think that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
But what I'm telling you is, just because we don't reauthorize them does not mean that they will fail. The money is there and available.
Well, we just can't let them fail. They're critical.
You have my word.
All right, that's good. All right, I yield back.
Yeah, gentlemen, yes, sir. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to be honest with you. You know, when we were talking on the floor, you said this Rules Committee was going to be delayed because you were going to be working on fixes for Puerto Rico and the
Correct.
U.S. Virgin Islands. I think I expected more. So I'm a
What more did
little
you
bit
expect?
I'm a little bit underwhelmed. I mean, even I don't have any disagreement with the with the tax provisions that are included here. I mean, I guess the only critique is that I think there are a lot more tax provisions that should have been included that could have benefited the islands. What about the USS? I mean, then there's issues about like what we need to do right now. Like, what about the USS Comfort? What about allowing our armed forces to be on the ground to help with more directly with the relief efforts and waiving the Jones Act, allowing Cuban doctors who have offered to go to these places and provide relief and aid to these people. I mean, there's 1,000 things that we can do, that to me are immediate. That I know. Maybe I just thought this was going to be a bigger relief package than it is, and I'm just a little bit concerned because I'm a little bit underwhelmed, to be honest with you.
Well, let me see if I
What
can
the need
answer
is.
that. And we haven't gotten to the point where I'll be your star witness today.
Okay.
You notice my beautiful shirt I wore just to make sure Louise could tell. It's the last of my shirts, Louise.
You look like a star, right?
I will say I do. Thank you, Jim. But let me see if I can address this in some colloquy that we're having. These are tax packages to handle questions related to IRAs, how we will reimburse the island, Puerto Rico, how the Virgin Islands mirrors our tax system, but how we would reimburse the governments.
No, yep.
That package that you're talking about is part of the $7.5 billion that was passed 2 weeks ago. That's CDBG money, that money that went to FEMA, and they have told us they anticipate that would be theoretically enough money to get them for some period of time. That was before the second hurricane. It was not, then we were hit again, and then Florida got hit. So we're trying to come and ascertain it. I'm hearing nothing but favorable comments on, and I try and focus on my friend Chris Cuomo on CNN every morning. And I hear Chris and Allison say, the work that's being done by FEMA is exemplary. Now, that's what I hear. So that money, but they're now just landing planes on the island. The airport had water all over it,
Right.
so.
Well, we have, a lot of us have constituents who have family members down there who are, they can't even locate, and electricity is still not running. But I mean, but even on these tax provisions, I mean, my understanding is the Democrats had suggested 21 bipartisan tax provisions that were included in relief legislation for previous disasters, and yet we only have 5 here. So that's one thing. And then all these other things I mentioned, families are panicked in my district trying to reach their loved ones. And it just seems that, again, I have no objection to the 5 tax provisions you have here. Democrats had proposed 21, so we only got 5.
And it's
But it
not
just seems that-
unusual for these tax
Right.
components to be later in the year.
Right, but it just seems like the urgency demands more than this right now. And, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, you're
I'll talk
entitled to the
some of my-
opinion, so
my
would that be
colleagues
the
and-
other tax pieces? Is that what you're saying?
Tax pieces and a whole bunch of other stuff that,
Like what's the other stuff?
well, I mean, what can we do right now? I mean,
That's what I was trying to say to you. I'm
USS
hearing that
Comfort,
FEMA, I hear they're doing all these
waiving the Jones
things.
Act, which would, allowing, I got a
Good.
list of 1,000 things we can do
Okay,
right now.
so, just so you know, I spoke to Chairman Rob Bishop this afternoon. Chairman Bishop, as we all know, was a former member of this committee for a long time, and Chairman Bishop is putting together a quickly assembled group of people to do exactly what you talked about, Mr. McGovern, and he wants your ideas. So I'm gonna call Rob and tell him, please include you. But these were things that we're not even they're limited in what they can even get in right now to Puerto Rico. It is.
But we can waive the Jones Act. We can send the USS Comfort there. I mean, and we can, we can allow Cuban
Tell you
doctors.
what I'll do. I will be better prepared to answer those questions, which I'm not prepared right now, tomorrow when we get on the floor, and I would want and expect you to, whoever's going to handle the rule, to please say, Pete, you said you were going to give us more information, including of the tax proportions and these other ideas. But I am going to ask Chairman Bishop to get in touch with you.
All right, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you
Chairman
said
President.
that whoever handles it should say to you, Pete, you told us yesterday that this is what you were going to do. Pete, you told us yesterday we weren't going to have any more meetings of the
You know, I
Rules
said there was nothing scheduled.
Committee. Okay. To follow on with Mr. McGovern, we could have expanded the work opportunity tax credit, or we could increase the allocation of low-income housing tax credit for counties that are devastated by hurricanes. We could have expanded the new markets tax credit to make low-income community investments within hurricane disaster relief. And there were, as Mr. McGovern pointed out, 21 extenders that were offered by Democrats. I guess, Mr. Chairman, what really is disturbing, and quite frankly disturbing me more each day as we progress, some of the brightest minds in Congress are on this committee. But we are not the experts on everything. Thus, turning to the arguments that should be made with reference to regular order, one of the reasons that things should go through committees because over time, the various jurisdictions do develop expertise. And when we do something like this, we're ignoring that reality, and we seem to continue down that path. Today, when I was presenting with reference to the rule, I cited to the fact, and I repeat, that everything around here doesn't have to be partisan. And it's feeling that way. Now, I don't run the show, and I understand this, but this is 3 days out before these measures expire. Now, I, for one, don't want to go home and face people and say that we didn't do what we could have about CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, which I consider to be a priority. Maybe we could have come up with a better solution for the territories had we worked together. Now, we can sit here and discuss these individual provisions and their merits, but the fact remains that we aren't the experts on this, and that the committees are. And that's why bills are supposed to go through committee markups. Now, it's clear Democrats and committees have been shut out of this process. And we're sitting here telling you that, which is a shame, since we easily could have been involved with either a bipartisan extending FAA authorization or comprehensive package of extenders that provided the tax relief necessary for hurricane victims to recover and rebuild. The bill before us is neither. And we've barely even given a chance to review any changes since last night. All of us are accustomed to legislating, and there are many members here who won't have a clue about what they are going to be voting on tomorrow, Mr. Chairman. We have brand new members, a whole lot of folk who may very well have been able to come up here and offer ideas that are being precluded from doing same. We can continue down this path, and I'll say to you, Chairman, that if Democrats win the majority, and I'm on this committee, I will insist to Louise and to Nancy or anybody that's a speaker that we don't run this show this way. It's just not right for us to continue to ignore that there are 435 members in this body that represent this great country of ours, and 6 of the people in the territories, including the 2 ladies who are experiencing the problems that they are experiencing right now. I just want to go on record as saying that this process stinks. It didn't have to be this way. All of us have been here, and all of us could have put our heads together and tried to do something that's the right thing. I also pointed out in today's discussion of the rule that the other body is proof certain that you can do things bipartisan when they make a decision to do so. We had Senator Alexander and Senator Murray, both of whom have been involved in bipartisan efforts, both of whom have been involved in curing many of the ills that we confronted during the downturn in the economy. And what wound up happening is kind of sad, because they were shunted to the side, even though Senator Alexander, by requirement, said that he wouldn't continue along those lines. And then they put forward something that everybody knew was terrible, was mean, that wasn't going to benefit the country. And throwing things together like that just ain't right. Now watch what they do. You will see them, they won't vote on this measure. No need to vote on something they don't have the votes on. That's what Senator Cassidy said, and I agree with him. But you watch. Just as sure as shooting, you're going to have a bipartisan effort come out of the Senate. And some of our members on this side, particularly Republicans, aren't going to like what's getting ready to happen, largely because it's bipartisan. Now, you can continue to let that portion of your conference wag the dog, but I promise you that you're going to find yourself in disastrous political consequences because you've acted only in a partisan manner or politically. And all of us have our politics to preserve. All of us have our parochial interests. But when the deal goes down, we all have a responsibility to everybody in this country and not just those people that we represent. This is not addressing that in a meaningful way. I suffer to think how we go forward dealing with what else is needed in Texas and Southwest Louisiana. What else is needed in Florida? We're quibbling down there about debris removal. We got people that have had their houses removed in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, hospitals that have been closed, dams that are about to break, and we're sitting around here piddling with partisan politics. Count me out of that, Mr. Chairman, and we'll remind you tomorrow what you said you'd do today, as I tend to do often.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, gentlemen. So that we get it right, without objection, I'll enter to the record a statement from the gentleman, Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Kevin Brady, that does help address the issue. If a member does want to know what's in the bill, then we offer that, I believe, clarification, the opportunity for someone to understand. There is very little about what we are doing here right now because we did it 2 weeks ago with the money that was given, $7.5 billion. I would not, in trying to take on the gentleman, I'm trying to understand, but politics, I think, did play a matter in Michigan with the water system.
And in the Northeast with Sandy.
I was not, I didn't have a chance where just so you know, was engaged mightily with the former mayor of New York, who was engaged, Mr. Giuliani, and the governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, who's still a very dear friend of mine, and I was doing everything I could do. And you're right, not all the things came in.
We were very badly treated.
$60 billion
But it will not concern what we
was
need
not.
to do now for our fellow members.
I hope it would not, but it
Absolutely.
does. And you know that it does, and I know that it does on our side. So what I would say to you is that what my hope is to be able to say to you that the tax provisions that you're speaking about, which we're saying is being denied, that I believe that that's a review that is taking place, and I believe we will be able to hopefully prove, oh, that's at the end of the year package. It's not necessarily now. And it's because of what needs to take place after the cleanup. I mean, Houston, Texas is still trying to deal with the mess of lots of things and has not gotten there. So it's timing, Judge, timing. I didn't say that it's not happening. I didn't say it is happening. I'm saying it's under review. But what I would hope to prove tomorrow is, and those are efforts that come after the immediate assistance and after the tax provisions. So I don't want to tee up tomorrow, be called on the carpet. What I want to be able to do is to answer you and saying, and those are being looked at, and they would be in a year-end package.
Who controls the time? Did you yield back?
I did.
May I have a minute?
We're here, these are opening statements.
Okay.
We're
this
trying to make
is,
sure we're talking to
all
each
right.
other.
I want to make it clear that I don't know of anybody from the Northeast that would begrudge a dime, that we try to save people's lives, and that we understand. I understand on a per capita basis that Puerto Rico sends more people into the military than almost any other part of the country. My governor from New York is in Puerto Rico right now, the Air National Guard from New York, as well as the Air National Guard was in Texas. and in Florida, because we believe very strongly that we are our brother's keepers and our.
Betting on 9/11,
So
we did a lot of
in
those
9/11,
things.
you were there for us.
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly.
Well,
But
a lot of people-
let's face it, none of this does anything really. I
Well,
have to agree with my
But I'd
fellow.
like to say to you,
member
this is
Hastings.
for people relief. The business relief of deciding what you're going to do comes immediately after the cleanup.
Yeah.
So
Well-
I can't, there's no way to satisfy you except to say, I'll address when that would come and how that might look.
Well, let me follow my fellow member here, Mr. Hastings, and say had we done a better job all the way through, we wouldn't be finding ourselves in this position. It seems to me that we run the House in such an ad hoc way. Oh, this happens here, so let's go up and do that. I mean, almost every bill that we get comes without even committee action. And it really is, and all closed, so that nobody can even attempt to make any changes in the legislation. We've really got to stop that. We're critical needs here, and I think all over the United States, it's not just now, but I've watched the infrastructure crumbling and all the other things that are going, and we have got to get together, grow up, and decide why we're here, and get around to getting it done.
Yes, ma'am.
When we still have cities like mine and many others, I'm sure that still have brick water mains in lieu of pipes, and the number of things that we have simply let go. I don't think there's a person in this Congress that wouldn't want to get together and really discuss what we need to do at home and what we need to do to rebuild this country. I'm ready to go, and I can't imagine anybody that I know in Congress who isn't. But we can't do it by just, let's decide today we'll go up the rules and do a little something. I really want more planning done. Have somebody, and I'd also like to know, I mean, we just saw this a minute ago, you know that. We had no idea what's in it. We hope for the best, but I will say that I don't see there's much in here that Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands or any place else, even Houston, can take much comfort in. And I want us to do better. But we are certainly on a time constraint since Friday is coming very quickly. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for unanimous consent request, I'd like to, you just inserted in the record Chairman Brady's statement. I'd like to insert this.
Without
No,
objection.
this is from Congressman Bill Pascrell regarding some of our concerns about the tax
Good,
provisions.
and I do appreciate that. We'll of course enter that in the record. Thank you. Judge, anything further? Mr. McGovern? Ms. Slaughter? Okay. Does anybody on our side have any discussion they'd like to have? I'd next like to, if I can, to yield to the gentleman from the state of Washington for an introduction that would be of special nature for the gentleman. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a special day for me. I've got a special person here that I wanted to introduce to everybody, members of the committee. My daughter, Jen Cena, is in the audience, right, sitting right in this row right here. She came to spend a few days in Washington, D.C. She's going to go up to Philadelphia at the end of the week to visit an aunt. And so, yeah, just want to make sure she was recognized here. She's never been to Rules Committee before, so.
I'd visited Jen Cena when I went out last year. And yeah, I had an opportunity. So I got another hug and kiss. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Dan, you've also got some special guests here.
You know, this seems to be the Northwest Day, Pacific Northwest Day. I've got three folks here that are members of the shellfish and fishing industry. So if I could introduce Dale Beasley, he's with the Columbia River Crabbers. Mr. Beasley is with us today. Butch Smith, he's a salmon and sturgeon fishing industry person, which brings me back to my childhood. Dad used to take us out to go salmon fishing in Ilwaco, Washington, and that's where Butch is from. Marilyn Sheldon is from Willapa Bay, where we raise some of the best oysters in the world. So welcome to these three individuals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dan, thank you so much. And our visitors are very welcome. We're delighted that you're here. And Jen Cena, I'm delighted to see you again. It's where your dad spends a lot of time. Sometimes more than Yes, he is. He is awesome. Okay, now, I came prepared, and I think what we're trying to do is move effectively through this. Mrs. Slaughter and I had spoken ahead of time, but if anybody has any questions, we're prepared for that. Otherwise, I'm going to move right now to the motion from the distinguished gentleman from Oklahoma. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 3823, the Disaster Tax Relief and Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2017, a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate with 40 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Ways and Means, and 20 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Financial Services. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill and provides that the bill shall not be subject to a question of consideration. The rule provides that the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Finally, Section 2 of the rule provides that it shall be in order at any time on the legislative day of September 28, 2017, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15, and the Speaker or his designee shall consult with the minority leader or her designee on the designation of any matter for consideration pursuant to this section.
Thank you very much. You've now heard the motion from the distinguished gentleman, the young vice chairman of the committee. Is there amendment or discussion to that? Gentleman from Florida is
I
recognized.
just want to place on the record that this is the 44th closed rule. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Further discussion? Vote will now be on the motion from the gentleman from Oklahoma. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Oh, gentlewoman asked for roll call vote. Clerk will poll the committee.
Mr. Cole. Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, aye. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse, aye. Mr. Buck. Mr. Buck, aye. Ms. Cheney. Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Slaughter. No. Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern.
No.
Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings. Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report the total.
7 yeas, 3 nays.
The motion from the distinguished gentleman's is passed, and accordingly, I will be handling this for Republicans, and Mrs. Slaughter will be handling this for Democrats. Before we go too far, I know there's always a question, and that is, will we be meeting again? And that the answer to that is there's nothing scheduled this week. I would like to take point of personal privilege and thank Barbara Angus, who is here with us today, who is an expert tax person who worked with me for about an hour today. I thought we'd have a lot more questions, so I am not getting tested too much, but Barbara did a great job with me to make sure I was prepared to answer questions about the bill. I couldn't answer things that aren't in the bill for Judge Hastings, but I could answer things that were in the bill. And I want to thank you very much and for your insistence that we meet today and properly get this done. As I told Stacy that Mrs. Slaughter and this committee would stand behind her and Jennifer to hear feedback and to work all we can on this.
We just hope that more is to come.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, any other work for the committee? I want to thank our awesome guest today, Justine. Glad you're here. This finishes our work for the day.